Good morning, church. It's good to see you. I hope you guys are full and restored and you had a good Thanksgiving. I've started working out with my kids, 4 or 5 times a week. They wanted to start going to a gym, and I just run at home normally, but they're wanting to get in shape. They want to get more weight put on. They wanted to look better. I don't know what they want, but they're wanting to go to the gym, so we got a membership. I brought them to the gym, and it's been actually like 5 or 6 years since I've gone to the gym. I just run at home all the time, and so how out of shape I was has become very evident in the last month. As just the soreness has made it impossible to move and sleep for the last few weeks every time I go. But I went to the gym after Thanksgiving, we had a big meal, and you can kind of measure how much you overdid it by going to the gym the day after Thanksgiving and finding out what you're capable of that day, because after being on the treadmill for about 20 minutes, I thought I was going to die, and I got off. And that's how I knew how good Thanksgiving was, is that I wasn't able to run for very long. But I hope you guys had a great time with one another. I hope that you walk away from Thanksgiving counting your blessings and feeling thankful for everything that God has given you and your family. We're rounding out the year, and today we're going to talk a little bit about this concept, a concept of asking for help. And that might seem strange, but it fits with the era that we live in today, which feels a little bit topsy-turvy, the world that we're living in. It seems like up is down, down is up, everything's mixed up, and you don't always know what's right or what's wrong. And I feel sometimes like I'm just going to shut up because it seems like everything I'm saying is offending somebody somehow. There's this scene from this movie called Zoolander, and if you've not seen it, I'm not recommending it, okay? That's not what's happening here. It's very crass at certain points. It's not godly in any way. However, it does have some funny moments in it. And one of those moments has been going through my head with increasing rapidity over the last year. And the main character of this movie is Derek Zoolander. The whole movie is kind of like a comedy about modeling, about fashion models, and specifically male models. And Derek Zoolander is a very famous male model entering the twilight of his career. And what he is known for is this series of looks that he has created when he's photographed. And I'm not going to do the looks for you, you can look them up, but you know how sometimes when people take selfies, they do like the duck lips thing? It's like a combination of that with the head tilt and the hair and everything. And anyway, he's got these different looks and he's given them names, so like his most famous look is called Blue Steel. And so he'll do that for a certain type of male modeling. Then he's got another one called Ferrari. He does that for certain types of looks. He's got one called Le Tigre. He says he does that for catalog work. So anyway, these are all looks he does. But the funny part of the movie is that every one of these looks is exactly the same. Okay, they're all the same exact pose, okay? But everyone in the movie acts like they're different. Okay, so like when he does one, like, ooh, wow, that's amazing. And then he'll do another one. It's exactly the same look. And they'll go, whoa, that's even better, Now, throughout the course of this movie, he's been leading up to this look that he's been working on for a decade called Magnum, okay? He's famous for Blue Steel. He does Le Tigre, he does Ferrari. But Magnum, he's been working on. At the end of the movie, he does it, and it's exactly the same as the other three, all right? The villain in the movie is a guy named Will Ferrell, okay? Will Ferrell is who I relate to, okay? Because at the end of this movie, he's like castigating Derek Zoolander. And he's like, and here's the other thing that I don't get. All of your looks are the same. Every single one of them. He goes, what are you guys talking? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills with you guys because they're all the same look. And this idea that everyone is acting like they see something that's not there, but you don't see it, and you feel like, am I the crazy one or is the world the crazy one? That's how I have felt often over the last 2 years. Am I taking crazy pills here or is the world really just kind of mixed up at this point? The frustration of that character, I relate to. And I think what has compounded my own sense of growing unease is that we live in this very self-righteous time period. Where it's like the world has become a bunch of first graders running to the teacher to tell on somebody else, okay? And it's happening over and over again. And whoever has the best social media game wins, okay? It doesn't matter if you're right. As long as you can say it the most, and you can say it the loudest, and you can say it the broadest, you get to win the argument. So it's bewildering to me. I still feel uncomfortable taking selfies to this day, much less posting my opinions on somebody else or something else online, okay? And this environment seems to produce all kinds of very specific problems, all right? Because with a widespread social inclination towards self-righteousness comes an equally widespread defensiveness and lack of genuine vulnerability between people. Because vulnerability leaves people open to attack. And we're living in an attack-oriented era right now, where if you admit to being wrong, that could be used against you in ways it never would have been in the past. And here's the thing, everybody's wrong. This is the crazy part. Like, this is the part where people have lost their minds. Everybody's wrong. You'll have an adulterer persecuting a racist. You'll have a racist persecuting someone who's stolen tons of money. You'll have people who are super greedy persecuting somebody else in some other crime. And they're all guilty of something, but they're all acting like the crime that they're prosecuting is greater than anybody else's. And it's this unbelievable kind of like tense environment of self-righteousness. And when you have that type of environment, nobody wants to admit they're wrong. Nobody's going to admit that they have weakness. And therefore, you crush vulnerability between people. You guys understand what I'm saying? And I would say that vulnerability is key to many interactions between people if there's going to be connection. And if there's going to be genuine relationship. You cannot be close to somebody if there's not actual vulnerability. If there's not a lack of defensiveness, if there's not a willingness not only to admit that you're wrong, but to be wrong. To live with people is to take risks with people. It's to put your thoughts out there and then for those thoughts to be wrong and for there not to be a penalty for them being wrong, as long as you can admit that you're wrong. This is all the social backdrop that gives context to our subject today. How to say, I need help. Because this climate I'm describing of rampant self-righteousness and diminishing vulnerability makes the asking and giving of help increasingly difficult. And we're in a season right now where people should be willing to help one another. And where people should be willing to ask for help. And with the lack of vulnerability, that doesn't happen. Or if it does happen, it happens in some of the most unhealthy ways imaginable. I'm sure you've noticed that you find yourself more willing to give some of your friends help than other of your friends. All right, so just think about that. You could have two friends that ask you for the same exact type of help. And one, you feel more inclined to help than the other. All right, now, sometimes those inclinations we don't really examine those. But when you do examine them, I think it probably relates to what this message will be about. There are usually good reasons for why we feel like helping some people and we don't feel like helping others. If you take away all of our biases and prejudices, there are some pretty good reasons why we feel like helping others. Demanding help has become the staple of the way that people request aid nowadays. And it doesn't inspire a lot of volunteers when you demand help. Wisdom dictates that vulnerability and humility should be the main ingredient of anybody who's asking for help. That just seems like common sense to me. And the Bible talks about this. I've never done well when people expect me to help them because they believe they're entitled to that help. Whether it's a brother in the ministry I lead, whether it's a homeless woman on the street, whether it's my family, or whoever, there is a twisting feeling that I get in my stomach when I'm ungraciously demanded to help. Now here's the thing, that's my problem. That is my problem. As a follower of Jesus, I don't get to criticize people when others expect me to do good. All right, because I chose to follow Jesus. I chose to live my entire life as a servant. There's an expectation of me not to complain about being asked to serve. It is the meek who inherit the earth, and I have a lot to learn about living in a meek state of mind. I cannot expect a fallen world to know how to ask me for help or to even appreciate it when it's been offered. And you know what? That's none of my business. I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm called to a specific way of helping and service. And I have to get over whether or not I like the way people ask for help. As a church, one of the places we used to volunteer for in the region I led in Chicago was this PADS shelter. It was called PADS. And our region of the church filled a shift to take care of about 30 men one night each month. And we would provide these men dinner, bedding, and then breakfast in the morning before transportation came and took them off to their job training or counseling or the other things that they went to. And every time I went to PADS, I was amazed at the patience and the compassion of our volunteers, some of whom were single parents who had so little themselves but took a night of their month to give to others. And I was always amazed by it. And then sometimes in equal measure, I was stunned by the bitterness, the unappreciative and mean treatment that those volunteers would receive from those to whom that they were serving. While I understand the world is a hard place and for that reason creates hard people, I'm still a person who can be but that too is my problem. As a follower of Jesus, I don't get to harbor those type of feelings. I have to deal with that. I have to live as a humble servant to all mankind. Because I'm supposed to be building a character of graciousness from moment to moment wherever I go, of patience and of wisdom. Someone not easily given over to self-righteous judgment myself. And when disciples can be surrendered to that, when they can be unoffendable by a self-entitled world, well, beautiful things can happen. I remember one time, there was a couple in Chicago that had just been baptized, and they got married like 6 months after they got baptized, and it was this great story because they're just this amazing couple. And it was one of those, it was like a couple, sometimes the whole church just adopts. They fall in love with this couple. And and we all, they invited the whole church to their wedding, and we got to their wedding, and it was just not a well-planned wedding, okay? When the members of our church do a wedding together, it's amazing how many people volunteer to help out for free, right? Like our weddings, you just have a ton of people. You guys are with me, right? Like there's people helping out, and there's ushers, you got servers, you got people making food. It's amazing. Well, they'd only been in the church for 6 months. They'd already been planning some stuff, so they had a bunch of other people helping. So when we showed up, though, like nothing was done. Like there was so much that was unplanned. And of course, all the disciples, they show up, and what do? They got their suits on, and they just start digging in and helping. You know what I mean? So you've got disciples who came to be a part of the wedding that are now serving food to everybody else. They're getting drinks for the bridesmaids. And let me tell you, this group of bridesmaids, this was a very entitled group of bridesmaids, okay? Like you're showing up and they're like, oh, you must be here to serve me. Can you please go do this for me? Or without the please though, And so, but all the disciples, they pitched in. I'm out there in my suit, like parking cars, There's like 4 of us guys parking cars. I barely saw the wedding at all because we're all serving. And then there's the reception afterwards, and we're all the waiters and everything. And the disciples, they're just kind of chuckling because this wasn't good planning. But here we are coming together. And everybody who's there is like, wow, this is a really well executed and planned wedding. And even the bride and the groom, they didn't quite understand in the moment what was happening. And we're all like, it's cool. It's fine. And, we don't want to say it. And later, it's what that couple later realizes all that went into it. And there's so much gratitude there. And it's one of those moments where the disciples, without being asked, without being thanked, without needing to be begged, just go and do the right thing and serve. With that. And there's just kind of a wink and a nod, like this is who we are. We show up at places and we make stuff happen. You don't have to beg us. We're just going to go ahead and do it. We'll dig in and do the dirty work. And when disciples live like that from day to day, it's wonderful. It's absolutely amazing. The reality for us is this. If God can love a world after it has killed his son and turned its back on its own creator, then we can all certainly shoulder a little humiliation and a little disrespect in order to follow the way of Jesus and give help even when it's not asked well for, even when it's not asked at all, even when there is no gratitude. We can do that because we've been given much, especially with how blessed our life. When you think about this last week, and for most of us, the Thanksgivings we had and the food that we ate and the families that we were around, we can do this. We are a blessed people. So there's no point in expecting the world around us to drop its entitlement before they ask for help. We can't be so easily offended that we would withhold help from a lost world that doesn't know how to be decent. Nor can we be self-righteous with people with whom the world has treated with awful cruelty. We will do as Jesus did. Help the world around us regardless of whether or not they love or hate us. Regardless of how they ask for that help. That's what we do. That's what we're expected to do. We must act in charity even if the people we help treat us as servants and slaves because we volunteered to do so. Amen? However, as disciples with one another, we could do much better. We have to do much better when we ask help from one another. There is a higher expectation between us than between us and the world. Does that make sense? We cannot mirror that self-same entitlement that the world wields against people. We are a people accustomed to giving help, or we should be. We should be accustomed to giving help. But we're also a people that asks for help from one another pretty often. I mean, rarely any of us have hired a moving company before, all right? Because we have a church, you know? Isn't it amazing if one of you gets really sick, all of a sudden you have disciples bringing you meals? You didn't say anything, just disciples started doing it. Now, I'm not saying everybody gets treated that way. I'm just saying in general, we help each other, and we ask for help from one another. But we need to learn to ask for help with wisdom and with grace, and without losing conviction that God is always with us regardless of whether or not we're given help from one another. And I want to look at some examples for help because this has a lot to do with why Jesus is amazed by faith. It has a lot to do with the way that people come to him and ask for help. Go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 8, and we'll start in verse 5. And we're going to talk about a story of the Centurion. All right, Centurion is a Roman soldier, a leader, not Jewish. This particular Centurion, however, probably was a supporter of the synagogue, but he was not a Jew. He might have been what was called a God-fearer, someone who supports the Jews, who's kind of a fan of the Jewish God, but is not accepted necessarily as a Jew. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly." All right, I think from right there we got to understand that this guy's probably a fairly remarkable man. Because he's a Roman soldier, a Roman leader who is worried about his servant. Okay, and that would not be customary, perhaps, within the Roman world. Jesus said to him, "Shall I come and heal him?" The centurion replied, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. But just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those who were following him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith." Let me just pause right there. He's got a ton of Jews following him. He's been dealing with Jews the whole time. He's been talking to Jews the whole time. And then he runs into this Roman. He has a 30-second conversation with this guy and then tells all the Jews, "Man, in my entire life, I've not come across another human being more faithful than this one." Now you can imagine this is the guy that's oppressing the Jews. And the Jews are like, "Jesus, what the heck? You're telling me in all the time with our people, your people, this is the most faithful person. What an insult to the rest of us." "I say to you that many will come from the east and from the west and will take their places at the feast of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, let it be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that very moment. I mean, this turns into a guy asking for help, turning into a scathing rebuke of all the Jews. All right, but what we're going to look at is the guy asking for help, the non-Jew. Now, he begins with respect. Let me just say that. When asking for help, he begins with respect. He calls Jesus Lord. He considers him someone greater than himself, who is a Roman leader himself. The centurion is a legitimate social authority in the land. Yet he begins this conversation by placing himself into a lesser place than Jesus, the person with whom he's asking for help. Because Jesus is the one who's in the position to give the help that he needs. When asking for help, you have to show genuine respect to the people to whom you're asking. You have to put your pride away. Some of us hate asking for help. We think it makes us less. We think that it provides power to the people we're asking. And all that's worldly. It's all nonsense. But we should certainly place ourselves in a position of humility when asking people for help. This is what the centurion does. You have to put yourself in the position to be the lesser. Saving face, saving your reputation, saving your ego cannot be a part of asking for help. That's all worldly. That's the world infecting your heart and your thinking about life. The centurion didn't care what his colleagues would have thought about him. He cared too much about his servant who was suffering. He cared more about the help that he would receive than about his own reputation. If you can't be humble and give respect when you need help, then you aren't ready to ask someone for help. You're not ready to receive help. Number two, he admits that this is something he doesn't deserve. The centurion, he doesn't act entitled in this moment. He tells Jesus, I don't deserve this. He does not look at the help that he's asking for as something that he's entitled to, which means he would not be offended if Jesus said no. Like imagine if Jesus just said no. No, sorry, dude, I can't do that right now. I don't think the centurion would have been offended because I think he'd already put himself in a position to go, I don't deserve this. I think many people get this step wrong and fail right away. Because when you ask for help, if you're in a position, if you already state to yourself, I don't deserve this, then when the answer is no, then you can continue on gracefully. They're ready, people who feel like they deserve help are ready to be disrespected if they don't get the answer they want. When you ask for help and believe you deserve it, well, you put yourself in a very special category when you believe that you deserve the help. That category says this, while there are millions of needs in the world and billions of people with needs, I am one of the very special few who deserves to have their needs met right now when I want them to be met. Part of what amazes me is the way that the centurion is during this conversation, especially in contrast with the Jews who are around Jesus, who felt entitled to their salvation, who felt entitled to their chosen place, and felt entitled to their superiority. Do not ask for help with the expectation that you deserve it. It's an ugly way to ask for help, and it really puts the person you're asking in a very difficult position. All right, number three, he says he's not fit to have Jesus come to his house. And that is a way to show both humility and respect to Jesus as a Jew. Okay, and here's the reason why. Jews were not allowed to go into the house of a Gentile. All right, that was against the Old Testament law. The centurion knew this and cared about this. He knew that Jesus had certain limitations, and he cared about those limitations. He's the one asking for help, and he'll do anything to make it as easy as possible for the one who could give the help. All right, he's thinking about the person that he's asking for help from. He has faith that Jesus doesn't need to go out of his way, and he doesn't want to inconvenience Jesus at all. Furthermore, he wants to honor Jesus' own convictions, his own energy, and his own limited time. When you ask for help, take every consideration of the person for whom you're asking for help into mind. Which means be as flexible as possible when you ask for help. Make it easy for the people with whom you're asking help. Continue to demonstrate humility and grace and ultimately your trust in the authority of God to meet your needs. That's all a part of asking for help. And lastly, what the centurion does is in contrast to many of the entitled Jews, who would not he stood in contrast to the entitled Jews who would not find a home in the kingdom. Jesus looks at this entire interaction with the centurion who asks for help and compares it to the way he comports himself to the ways that so many Jews did not. Verse 10, when Jesus heard this, he said, truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom, the Jews, will be thrown outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Essentially, he's saying that there will be a lot of people that will be a part of the kingdom that's going to surprise you. When you come to the great feast, there's going to be some people sitting at the table you didn't expect to be there. And there's definitely going to be some people that expect to be there that won't be there. He is juxtaposing the manner in which the centurion asks for help and demonstrates his faith as compared to others who live as though they're entitled to special treatment. It's weird. It's interesting. Jesus makes this salvation statement about the way someone asks him for help. That faith is demonstrated in the way you ask for help, in your expectations of other people, and in that grace. The way we ask for help demonstrates where our faith in God really is. This last story, we're going to look at one more story here. Go ahead and turn to Matthew 15. And I'm just going to say this right now. This story is going to test your faith a little bit. Because how Jesus deals with this person is perplexing, to be honest. And it's one of those times in the Bible where there's a lot of people who have offered answers to why Jesus talks this way in this particular interaction, but none of them are authoritative. I think it's one of those stories that's there and left there without explanation because it tests our faith. All right, now I'm going to offer you my own explanation, but that's it. It's my own explanation. All right? At this point in the narrative about Jesus in Matthew 15, Jesus has been highly critical of the ways that the Jews have decided to teach about honoring God. Like, what does it mean to honor God? The Jews are very ceremonial about this, and Jesus says it's really a matter of heart. It's a matter of both the way that you live, but it's a matter of what's going on inside of you as well. Because you can give the appearance of devotion and honor towards God, while on the inside be a total mess. And Jesus says that little dissonance can't be. There has to be harmony between what's going on inside of you and what you're portraying to the world outside of you. And he's been distancing himself from the Jews in the way that they talk about God. And so now he's decided to go back to Jerusalem, and he's going back to Jerusalem going through Samaria. And most Jews, if they're in Nazareth and they're going to Jerusalem, they go around Samaria because Samaria is filled with their ungodly, unfaithful cousins, the Samaritans. The other 10 tribes that were overrun by the Assyrians and dispersed, and now have kind of a mixture of Judaism with paganism, and it's kind of this weird thing, but they believe that what they believe is the true way, while the Jews are like, no, what we believe is the true way, so there's a lot of friction there. Typically, the Jews choose not to go through their country. Jesus goes through their country, speaking to them and healing them and talking to them. It's kind of controversial. So we come to Matthew 15. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. And so here you have this situation where Jesus is going through. He's teaching, he's preaching. So you have a Canaanite woman, and she's following Jesus around, begging him, hey, heal my daughter. And Jesus is ignoring her, all right? And she is persistent. She follows them around, and the disciples are getting unnerved by this. They're unnerved by two things: this woman's persistence in asking for help, and Jesus' persistence in silence. All right? They're both making it weird. All right? The woman could fix it by being quiet, and Jesus could fix it by saying either yes or no, or just, doing something to alleviate her problem, all right? Because it's awkward now. And so the disciples say, Jesus, can you do something? Can you send her away? Can you tell her to be quiet? So Jesus answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel, which is interesting because he's in Samaria. All right? The woman came and knelt before him, Lord, help me. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Whoa! All right, that gets you canceled these days, okay? You can't call someone a dog. You can't call this woman a dog. What Jesus is saying, one of the ways to look at this is like, it's not right to take food from the children and then give it to their pets. All right, it doesn't sound any better, does it? No, it's amazing. And the disciples, I would have loved to see the disciples' faces when Jesus said that. I'm sure some of them were like, ooh, ouch. But I think some of them were like, that's right. It's about time he said something like this. Her response is amazing. This is one of those times where, sometimes you have friends that just always seem to say the right thing at the right moment. Like they just have it in their mind to respond well. This is one of those women. Yes, it is, Lord, she said. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that very moment. This is truly one of the most puzzling exchanges I've read between Jesus and another human. For the purposes of today's discussions, I'm not going to conjecture long or thoroughly upon why Jesus decides to speak this particular way to this particular woman. Suffice it to say, Jesus does not treat this healing, this particular moment of healing, the same way that he has treated other moments of healing. All right, there's a couple things to notice about this. Number one, the woman is persistent and tenacious. All right? I don't know if you notice this in the New Testament, but God lends a lot of virtue to those of us who are persistent. He doesn't mind us annoying him with our persistence. We can knock on his door as much as we want. As a matter of fact, it's encouraged. Number two, the disciples are growing tired of her pleading and ask Jesus to send her away. And I'm sure they're like, Jesus, just heal her daughter so we can end this. All right? Number three, which leads us to number three, but Jesus will not because he was sent first to the Jews. That's his reasoning. I'm not going to heal because I was sent first to the Jews, which leads us to point number four. It's true he was sent to the Jews, but we've already seen that he heals centurions who are not Jewish. So it doesn't make sense. His line of reasoning doesn't make sense. The woman is persistent, however. Keep in mind that when she comes to Jesus, she calls him Lord, okay, and kneels before him in worship. She has followed the same exact pattern as the centurion that we just read about, all right? Then Jesus says something that modern readers can't bear to hear as anything but wildly insulting. He calls her a pet. He cannot give the food that should go to the Jewish children first to the pets. My belief is that Jesus is testing this woman right here. Not only that, but he's demonstrating to all those around him, he's using this moment to show everybody else. Let me show you what faith actually looks like. It's not entitled. It's not easily offended. It's unassuming, but it's persistent. And because she's not entitled, nor does she believe she deserves this help, she remains unoffended at Jesus' words. She replies without bitterness, and she replies with faith. And Jesus says again that he's amazed by the faith of another non-Jew. And all the Jews in the audience are like, what the heck? What the heck? And then he heals her daughter. In that moment, right there. He doesn't go see her. He just goes, just so you know, your daughter right now, because of your response, is healed right now. That must have been the fastest run home that woman ever had. Both the centurion and the Canaanite woman demonstrate amazing faith and obvious wisdom in the way that they ask for help, period. And they both impressed Jesus by the way that they asked for help. In both cases, their personal faith in God was evident in the manner in which they said, I need help. The way that they asked for help demonstrated where their genuine faith actually was. And it's funny, Jesus is measuring their faith by the way that they're asking for help. Now here's the thing. In this room, we all need help. Doesn't matter how good your week has been, you need help. You're a mess. Every one of you are a mess. I know I'm a mess. I've had one of those weeks that's just humiliating. I've had one of those weeks where you're like, man, I thought I knew something, but I didn't. I thought I was good at something, but I'm not. And it's been one of those weeks where I've thought back to the, cavalier advice that I've given to other people and just like cringe. Because what am I doing giving advice to anybody? I'm a moron. I shouldn't be giving advice to anybody. I should wear a sign that says, don't ask me for help because I'm stupid. That's the kind of week I've had. We all need help. And here's the thing. I think some of us, we think we need help in one area, but we need it in another area. That's a whole other sermon right there. Like, I think a great experiment would be to go, tell me where you need help most. You write it down, and then I go ask the 10 people who know you best. Tell me where you think he needs help. And I bet those answers are different. But the point is, we all need help. We need to learn how to ask for help the right way. In a way that demonstrates faith, in a way that demonstrates vulnerability, in a way that shows, regardless of whether or not we get the help we ask for in the moment, our faith is in God, not in the people we're asking help to. We need to learn to ask for help the right way. Man, and right now, in the world that we live in, we got to get good at it. We got to get good at asking one another for help, and we got to get good at giving one another help. Jesus has shown over and over in the narrative that entitled people will be surprised by their own exclusion when the time comes for us to need an advocate. And the way that we ask for help sometimes demonstrates whether or not we're going to be included or not. We're all going to be judged. We're all going to be found guilty and wanting and needful of help. And at that point, we will be desperate for that help. We will do anything for that help. What we've read today is the manner in which we seek help in this present world says a lot about what we can have and what we can expect in the next world. Abandon all position of prestige and make your request as a humble servant in this life. If you're married, if you've got roommates, drop the pride. Drop the saving face and ask for help with vulnerability. And trust in God. That's where our trust in God, that's where our faith in God is really revealed. Is can we do that? Can we open ourselves up for attack in such a horrible world of self-righteousness and judgment and put our trust in God and not in the world around us? Abandon all position of prestige and make your request humbly. Be faithful to God and possess no entitlement amongst men. It is the meek who inherit the earth, not the brats, not the embittered, and not the self-delusional privileged. Ask without expectation, ask freely, and put your hope in God. He's the one that died for you. Let's go ahead and say a prayer. Father, thank you so much for this week and the times that we had together and the blessings that you've given us. Father, I pray that we can readily bring to mind all the things that we should be thankful for. All the times that you have come to our rescue in our life, all the ways that you have helped us, Father. Please help us to be like the Centurion man and the Canaanite woman who ask for help with grace, with vulnerability, with self-awareness, Father, with gratitude. Help us to be those people with one another. And Father, when we go out into the world, help us be Jesus who offers help and who gives help without expectation of anything in return, God. As we take up the bread right now, we remember the way that Jesus lived life and the way that he spent his days walking from place to place, offering help to ungrateful people, to a people that would one day murder him, Father. And he did it willingly, and he did it cheerfully, God. Help us to imitate that. God, and as we take up the wine, as we take up the fruit of the vine, we remember the sacrifices that Jesus made and the help that he gave and the help that ultimately we have through his sacrifice, God. We love you so much. Thank you for the world that we get to live in, the friends that we get to have, the family that you've given us. God, please help us to live graciously. Help us to be people who offer help and to ask for help in the ways that demonstrate that we believe in you and that we have faith in Jesus. We love you. It's in your son's name I pray. Amen.